Hi, folks. This is Dina Pacwa of EmbodyTheSacred.net, and I just wanted to share a little bit about the process of surrendering. I know many other spiritual and healing arts teachers have talked about this process, and I just wanted to share a little bit about how that's looked for me over the years. And I can say personally that when things really hit the fan and when it's something really big, it's a lot easier for me personally to surrender because, right, there's what else can we do? We kind of reach a certain point where we have no other choice. But I'll share with you how that process has evolved for me over the years. The first really big example for me, and this was a big one, this was a big life event that really changed the course of my life. And I've talked about it in other videos, so I'm sure you've probably heard about this or read it on my website, but if not, here we go. So when I was 30 years old, so this is going back about 24 years ago, I was in a near fatal car accident. I was hit head on at an impact speed of 85 miles an hour. I had a very small car and all I had was a strap, not even a lap belt or an airbag. Car didn't come with them back then. So the whole front end of my car came in as my body went forward, and I shattered both my femurs, broke my rib cage, collapsed both lungs, lacerated my liver, and had other internal injuries, major whiplash, and a lot of, soft tissue damage and all that stuff. The big thing being that I stopped breathing because of collapsing both my lungs and the impact to my chest. So that initiated a whole process of a near-death experience without me completely losing consciousness. But I stopped breathing, and it took about 20 to 30 minutes for EMTs and first responders to get to me and to get to the scene. So I knew that I wasn't going to make it very long if I didn't figure something out or something didn't happen. But it was really miraculous because I felt like I was given a choice. Did I want to live or die? Did I want to stay or go? I was only 30 years old at the time. I knew I wasn't doing the work that my soul came onto this planet to do, which was to be of service. Even though I loved some of the aspects of what I was doing as a graphic designer and art director, I knew that I was meant to teach and I was meant to be much more of service. And fortunately or unfortunately, that accident kind of initiated that whole process. So I literally, nothing was happening. I was trying to breathe and I couldn't. And I could have just closed my eyes and gone and transitioned to the next world. And I just asked for help. I just said, all right, God, you've got to help me because I can't do this by myself. And as soon as I said that prayer, something happened and an energy came in. I didn't know what that was back then. I was very spiritual. I'd studied world religions in college. I was very sensitive to the spirit world from a small child, and I believed in angels. I was raised Catholic, so I had pretty strong faith. Though I don't always agree with, of course, a lot of what's been taught and shared by the church, but I do believe in Jesus and Mother Mary and the saints, etc. So anyway, I just said, all right, God, you have to help me. So I just really turned the whole thing over and just said, you have to help me. I can't do this alone. And I very laboredly started to breathe. I've been told for many years now that that was a miracle by many healthcare practitioners. So I do believe that was a miracle among many miracles to come in my life, but that was a pretty significant one. And then I was able to breathe well enough to be transported to Danbury Hospital, where they did a fantastic job putting my body back together. And I spent time in ICU, but I was out of the hospital in 2.5 weeks and on with my recovery, which led me to the work that I do today, which is a combination of holistic health education. I spent many years as a licensed massage therapist working in hospitals and clinics and doctors' offices, but I do more spiritually based healing work now, having worked with Indigenous and First Nations medicine people now for about 18 years. So that's really been my passion, is to connect people with their own spirituality and have that support them in their healing process, not to replace what might be needed in terms of Western medicine or even holistic or natural medicines. So they all work synergistically, and it is a privilege to be able to incorporate several modalities in that way. So anyway, my job now is to be the teacher of the humble teacher of great heroes, and I get to do that in many ways, gratefully through my own private practice, through Embody the Sacred, and also as an adjunct professor at Western Connecticut State University in the holistic health and health promotion departments, which I just absolutely love. But anyway, so that's surrendering. So the whole experience of not being able to breathe, I surrendered that, and it thankfully worked out. And then as I was being transported to the hospital, I started thinking about my job. I started thinking about my parents, my husband. Was I going to be able to hold on to my job? How we were going to pay the bills while I was in the hospital. Just so many things were running through my mind. And I didn't even know the doctors at Danbury, having grown up in Norwalk. So it was all these things running through my mind. And I just said, God, please, you have to take the rest of this, because all I can do is barely breathe. I can barely breathe on my own, and that's enough for me to do right now. You need to take the rest. And it just seemed like one miracle after the other. Since I let go of the reins, things kind of fell into place, and I was very blessed and very privileged by that. So at different times in my life, when I've had, really big things happen, that just seemed like it was way too much for me to handle. It's been, I would say, not easy, but easier to just hand it over. Another time that this was significant in my life was when my father was dying of Alzheimer's. And I knew, and my mother knew, that he was declining and his time was coming. We just didn't know when and how close he was. Like, did he need hospice yet? And, no one was really communicating with us. It seems like our culture is pretty afraid of death and doesn't really want to face it. So unfortunately, that kind of dragged things on for my father and put him in a position, and us in a position, that was really unfortunate, close to the end of his life. But thankfully, it was not that long. But, within a couple of months of his passing, he ended up in the hospital and had a bad reaction to a medication, which kind of pushed things along more quickly. And he really could have gone into hospice then, but the doctors recommended just putting him in rehab, which really was not the right place for him. He was almost 91 years old. He was 91 when he passed. And it was one of those things, my mom and I we were operating under, the idea we don't really know exactly what's going on with him. There were signs of him dying, which my mother and I both felt, but the healthcare practitioners weren't saying anything. The doctor only saw him for like 5 minutes here and there. How can that really be effective, right? Our healthcare system, just in so many ways, needs to be completely overhauled. We all know that. So, we just surrendered and said, we're doing the best we can here. And at a certain point, we were lucky and able to connect with a social worker that my mother knew, who connected us with hospice. So, that my dad's doctors, nobody was saying he needed hospice, but finally we talked to hospice and they said, oh yes, he's ready for this. This is his time. And so that really just created so much more of a peaceful environment. We were able to bring him home. We took care of him until his passing. He had a beautiful passing, which was well deserved. And, we and the hospice nurse and other staff made him as comfortable as possible. And it was really a very spiritual and profound situation. But, it's so scary when you're literally holding the comfort of someone's life in your hands and trying to make the best decisions for them, not having all the information, right? So that's really difficult. So it behooves all of us to educate ourselves as best we can. Now, I'm not a nurse or a doctor, so I can't claim that expertise, nor do I have it. So, we were really relying on my father's doctors and nurses, and it seemed like no one really wanted to face the fact that it was time for him to go into hospice. So that was really challenging, but we did do the best we could in that situation, and just having to surrender and say, we're doing the best we can here. And in the end, it worked out beautifully for him. Thank goodness. And then just recently, we had a situation with our dog, Lexi, who you can hear the dogs crying in the background probably because their daddy just came home. And our dog Lexi has canine epilepsy. So we went, and she has seen probably 7 different vets at this time, and we were relying on their expertise on certain medications. So we, just did the best that we could with that. And, we're just relying on their expertise. And, we just did the best we could. And she ended up in the hospital after a cluster seizure episode, which lasted almost 2 days, which really should have taken her life. But we, got very, very lucky, and we're very, very grateful that her vets were fantastic at Guardian Veterinary and also at Newtown Veterinary Specialists. So they were able to stabilize her. And, the whole thing, like not knowing what to do, what kind of condition she was going to be in after these episodes, the vet couldn't even really tell us, or the vets couldn't tell us how she was going to be afterwards, if she was going to be okay. So we just had to surrender the whole thing, just surrender it. We did all the things that we could. We agreed to her treatment. We visited. I brought her stinky t-shirts. So we had so many wonderful people praying for her and sending Reiki and good energy. But at a certain point, we really just had to surrender. And if it was her time, it was her time. I would have been heartbroken, so would have my partner Keith, but we just had to really surrender. I just surrendered her life to the Creator. I just said, dear God, whatever is for the highest and best good of this animal. We don't believe in letting our pets suffer. So, please guide us. What is the best thing to do? And we were given support and guidance throughout the whole process. Thankfully. And she's doing great now. So we're really very lucky there. But it's in the everyday things that it can be really hard to surrender, right? So it's sometimes the harder things to surrender are just the everyday, like our work and projects and our taxes and just the daily stuff. And I have a really hard time surrendering those things because maybe I have some control issues or something. But I just want to share a little bit. My friend Patty Lennon, who's an amazing author and teacher in her own right, has written this great book, Make Space for Magic. And she talks about you have to do your 100%. So I've gone through different phases of my own spiritual practices and law of attraction and how to navigate all of that. And sometimes it's like I'm wearing myself down. I'm trying to do everything. I'm trying to handle every detail. I'm not surrendering the reins at all. And then other times I'm like, okay, well, if the universe is going to help me, I'm just going to sit here and do nothing and just surrender the whole thing. And then nothing happens. And I wonder what the heck's happening. So what I can say is, thanks to Patty, is we have to do our 100%, but that doesn't mean 120. It doesn't mean 150. It doesn't mean 200%. We do 100% of whatever we can in that situation to the best of our ability. And then the rest we have to let go. And the rest is out of our hands. So I can say that that has been very helpful for me. Thank you, Patty. Thank you to my other teachers and guides along this path. And thank you to the Creator and to the angels and our loving, wise, compassionate, and evolved ancestors, all the beings of light that support each of us, but we have to ask for their help. We have free will, so they're not going to step in unless we ask, right? So it's ask, believe, and we have to let ourselves receive, as Patty teaches, and we have to let go. So that can be really hard in everyday life, but maybe we can all work on it together. All right, thanks so much. And if you want to reach out to me, you can reach out to me through embodythesacred.net. Thanks so much.